Even before 9/11, I vividly remember even, when I give talks, right? My famous line and storyline. I remember when I was in history class and everybody went around the room telling, what's your nationality? And I couldn't, I was so embarrassed to say that I was Egyptian. Just because of, there was nobody else in the room was saying that, right? And I know our history as an Egyptian and civilization. Now I am so proud of it, right? But before it was, I don't know why I was so embarrassed and ashamed, and I just felt like I was going to be singled out and be bullied. And
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to this week's edition of The Oasis. I'm your host, Haq Islam, and today we have a very special guest, Dena McCowie, who is a marketing expert who markets specifically and advocates for Muslim representation in not only media, but corporate America and all things like that. So Dena McCowie, welcome to The Oasis.
thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Please tell me about McCowie and Associates, your company, and why is it important?
Yes. Well, of course, when I started 7 years plus back, I rebranded probably like 5 times, like a typical entrepreneur. When I started my career journey, first and foremost, I grew up on Staten Island, which again, it was predominantly Italian Americans, and there was lack of diversity, to say the least.
That had to be quite an experience because there's a lot of cops on Staten. I'm not talking about in terms of but they lived there,
right.
So there had to be. Anyway, continue.
Yeah. Well, we definitely faced a lot of discrimination post 9/11, like all Muslims, and and you add a layer of a woman entrepreneur or aspiring entrepreneur at the time. I graduated from College of Staten Island, business management marketing, and I really had not that I had no idea what I wanted to do. I always knew I wanted to do something in the media space. I felt I was very into.
Let's focus on Staten Island for a minute because I'm curious. Your roots you're an Egyptian.
Yes.
Right. And that had to be, and you were in high school during 9/11? Or
junior
high school. How did that affect you? Your whole, Staten Island, for me, being a New Yorker, Staten Island was always a borough I just didn't want to go to. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
it's the forgotten borough.
Exactly. So, it's not the most diverse borough.
Yeah.
Queens is the most diverse borough. Brooklyn's a very diverse borough. Staten Island seems to be very homogenous.
Yeah, well, even before 9/11, I vividly remember even, when I give talks, right? My famous line and storyline. I remember when I was in history class and everybody went around the room telling, what's your nationality? And I was so embarrassed to say that I was Egyptian. And I think this was before 9/11. Just because of, there was nobody else in the room was saying that, right? And I know our history as an Egyptian and, civilization. Now I am so proud of it, right? But before it was, I don't know why I was so embarrassed and ashamed, and I just felt like I was going to be singled out and be bullied. And, my brother and I did face bullying like a lot of Muslim Americans in America, right? But I think before 9/11, there was a lot of that, I felt like there was a lot of cultural norms in America that as an Egyptian American, I didn't really relate to. So then I was kind of put into this category in a sense where I felt like I belonged somewhat in America because I was born in America, but I had this rich history of, yes, I'm Egyptian. We're reading about this in history class. And I should be proud of it, right? We have so much to be proud of, right? Our ancestors built the pyramids. Our music is sampled by the biggest hip hop artists now, right? Why am I so ashamed of this, right?
Why? Why do you think now?
Well,
Now,
there was
when you reflect back on your life, why do you think there was a level of shame?
well, there's a few different reasons. I personally believe there was a lack of community for me. I felt like when I looked in the room and I was looking around, well, I'm Italian. Oh, I'm this, and everybody had blonde hair, and I was just trying to really fit in a sense. I was young, right? And I think it goes back to why I even started my company, McCowie Impact. When you see teenagers and what affects or what age do people slash teenagers start really developing their confidence is when they witness advertising that they can relate to. They see media that they can relate to. So for me, that was it. It was creativity. It was magazines. And I thought I wanted to be in the magazine industry. I was for a bit. I was in Oprah magazine for a bit. It was great experience. Moved on to the next.
But no, you have a very interesting story, so I'm gonna take it slow.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So 9/11 happens. How does that impact you and your family?
Like a lot of Muslims, and a lot of people think that because I don't wear the headscarf, the hijab, that it didn't affect me as much. And again, I'm pretty sure those who wear the headscarf, I'm sure in public, they've gotten way more attention than those who do not, right? Because I could probably pass for Spanish or Italian. People tell me I look all sorts of nationalities or background, but it did affect me because it was Staten Island. Unless you attended the schools, you wouldn't really know. Like people looked a certain way, and it was a given that I was, Muslim because of many other reasons too, of the, certain
Just how you carried yourself.
right, certain traditions that me and my family and I believed, or there was just a lot of things that was a given that I was a Muslim, that I was Arab, American. Yeah, there was a lot of bullying. I remember in junior high school witnessing my brother get into a fist fight because somebody ripped his jersey that he just bought, right? And he called him a terrorist. And there was a lot of that. I personally didn't get into a fight, but there was definitely a lot of, I think in general, now it's probably, more heightened because of social media. But I think, social media now, it's a great tool, but there's also a lot of cyberbullying. But before then, it was you're in person, you're in a classroom, right?
Exactly.
So it's like
Exactly.
you fight me, right? The racial slurs were, constant, right?
Yeah.
And I would always witness my brother getting expelled for, being bullied and being called, names post 9/11 definitely heightened it.
All right. So then you went to college at Staten Island, and then what happened after that?
So I, like many as well, it was like probably 6-7 months of job hunting. I wasn't exactly sure of the direction that I wanted to go. I knew that I loved creativity, I loved storytelling, and I loved fashion, and I loved networking. So I had no idea how that all could be interconnected. Now I'm a public speaker, but I was a horrible public speaker, and I had really no direction. And I remember, 6 months of really tough time. It was, kind of went into a depression. Like I kept sending my resume to honestly companies that I didn't even really care for, like accounting. I was like anything, because that's what the school system tells you.
Do you think your last name was a hindrance?
I definitely think so, yeah. Because a lot of times, even during, it was like, what kind of name is McCowie? I mean, today people can't ask you that in interviews, but back then I remember there was a few times where is your background from, or what's McCowie?
Yeah,
right?
and this is why I wanted to ask that, because young brothers and sisters who are Muslim, they have to understand what we went through, so that hopefully they're not going through. My last name is Islam, so
right.
You can't. That's like putting it right in your face, But we paved the way, hopefully, so that the people who come behind us don't have to go through what we went through, the massive amount of questions about looking at you all crazy, or not even giving you an interview. So
Right.
Continue, please.
So yeah, there was a lot of that, and I remember I was like, okay, let me go get I want to pursue my master's, and I had somebody referred me to this gentleman that helped me write my essay, but he actually helped me put the pieces together, which the pieces were already there, but he pretty much helped me put the puzzle together. He's like, well, kind of like you, like, tell me your story. So I was like, well, I'm Muslim, I'm Egyptian, but whatever, but I want to do my master's. He's like, wait, hold on. And mind you, this was 2015. This was before diversity and inclusion was such a hot topic, and companies are trying to navigate how to, work with, groups of marginalized group. Now it's a hot topic, but this was before. And I remember he was like, okay, you enjoy storytelling and magazines and creativity, and tell me your story. I was like, well, I navigated a lot of identity issues, of cultural identity issues, and a lot of, things that I thought were normal in America, but the way I grew up as a Muslim, it was a constant struggle. And he's like, okay, I want you to write that in your entry level essay. So I went to Pace University for publishing. I received my master's in publishing. And to be honest, that was my, like Oprah would say, that was my aha moment of, wow, people actually care about my story. That's cool. Okay. So, but then how can I make this a thing?
I read an article on you in a magazine called Egypt Today, and your quote was, I use my voice and experiences to break barriers of what it means to be a Muslim woman, especially living in America. What does this mean to you? Expound on that.
Being a Muslim American woman in America to me means constantly breaking barriers of what it means to be portrayed as a Muslim American. It's a constant push, but it's also being mindful that I, like millions of other Muslim women, have basically we have a responsibility to. I don't represent all the Muslim women, but I feel like I have a responsibility to accurately represent what it means. And what it means is I want to make sure that the stories that I'm reading, in big magazines, or in, the advertising that you see in billboards or in Times Square, are accurately representative of Muslim Americans, right? It's not all Muslims wear headscarves. Not all Muslims, are terrorists. And that's the biggest thing, right? And I think we have our own history. Our history is rich, and our history there's so many different, layers to Arab, right? Yeah, who I am, but Arabs and Arab Americans, right? And me being Egyptian. And there's a lot of, struggles that I personally witnessed myself in the past, whether it's in, corporate America.
So so there was a reason. All of this is why you started your marketing company.
Yes.
So talk about that.
Okay. So, like they say, when there's no create your own lane, I personally believe that I did that. And I believe that I was rejected countless amount of times because of that reason. I personally believe that God has chosen me to be rejected and be upset and angry, and this is not fair, to put all that energy in saying, well, okay, cool, Dena, what would you like to see that would inspire you? What would you have liked to seen as a youth American or a teenager that would have inspired you, right, in corporate America that doesn't exist, right? I personally believe now we're slowly starting to see that. And a lot of what my company has, pushed for, whether it's partnership development and using artists to highlight Arab music, we really push for representation, not for just for Arab Muslim community. Actually, a lot of my work in the past hasn't really just catered toward Arab and Muslims, but now it's a personal mission of mine to really say, I need to continue on this path. Because it doesn't really exist a lot, right? I have these conversations a lot with corporations.
That's where I want to go, because you began to fill a void. that's what your company is doing. You're filling a void because there's 2 billion Muslims in the world, right? In addition to that, we're so underrepresented, underrepresented. And it reminds me of African Americans in a sense because, prior to, I guess, 1980, if you look at any show, there was no advertisements that went toward us. We were sometimes the background figures in a show, but if you saw anything like the Brady Bunch, there were no shows prior to Bill Cosby. The Bill Cosby show was, I think, it was like around 1980. So Muslims, Arabs are not being shown. Now, we got a few shows now with Remy Youssef, a couple others, but you've been doing this for a while. So talk about some of your initiatives with corporate America.
So before, I want to say even my experience to even getting those opportunities to pitch ideas. A lot of the companies that I have conversation with, I don't want to name any names, but some of them were interesting experiences, and not to call them out, but you have
Why
these.
Don't you call them out? It's no problem. They're not watching this show. Their CEOs will never see this.
I mean, listen, maybe actually it'll set them straight. So actually, a specific experience with, I think it was Crayola.
Crayons?
Yeah. They were super interested, right? I had this.
What were they interested in?
So I pitched them, let's include art, right? Like creative art, like there's coloring books for 4th of July, there probably Heritage Month, different Heritage Month. I don't see any for, I don't know, Muslims and
Ramadan.
And, right, like
any Muslim
Hallmark,
leader.
even Hallmark, right? Because they're together.
So I'm assuming you pitched Hallmark too.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
we got 2 out of you. We got
but Crayola. So Crayola, the woman was she was super welcoming, super nice. She connected me with her team. I don't know if it was the wrong team or not, but I just felt there was like a weird vibe, right? Like I'm very, What
was the pitch?
So I specifically said, hey, let's create something specific for the Arab community. Arab Heritage Month is in April, which, now it's an official recognition, by various states and leaders that April is Arab Heritage Month, right? So I said, let's do something that caters to the Arab community. It wasn't even for Muslims. It was for the Arab community because I kept seeing they promote Heritage Month and they were huge on that. And there was 4 people on the call, 1 African-American, probably, just to kind of tokenize and say, hey, we have representation. 1 older woman and 1 white woman. And the conversation went, I forgot the details, but the guy kind of, instead of acknowledging and saying, hey, we've never done this and we'd love to welcome the idea, they were very defensive, especially that white older woman. She was like, well, we have done something like that. And then somebody else said, yeah, well, we retweeted something for Arab Heritage Month. And I remember because I did my homework, whatever calls I have with any company, I do my homework on social media, what they posted about, what they didn't post about. And it was a hijabi, right? And it wasn't even from them. It was a retweet from, I don't know, it was like an artist and a hijabi. So there's 2 things that are happening. The hijab, they think the Arabs are all Muslim because they just said, right? They think that retweet was supposed to make me happy. So I was like, but that's not even Arab. And that's actually disrespectful. It's like saying, hey, let's do something for, Black History Month. Well, we already did that. We retweeted a black guy on Twitter. Like, imagine if that happened, right? So it's just, I think there's a lot of barriers to there's a lot of interest.
So how did you get around that?
I mean,
that's crazy. But so where did the conversation go?
I mean, I didn't wind up working with them. I'm very, maybe it's wrong, maybe it's right. I'm very confrontational. I'm not disrespectful. I'm very confrontational. I say what's on my mind. It's just me as, I guess, a storyteller or somebody who's just very passionate about just saying what's on my mind, right? I just said what's on my mind very,
And what did you say?
And actually, it was after we got off the call. I was very nice, but I said, hey, This is not the right representation. I think your team needs to regroup and kind of revisit how your team approaches pitches that have to do with underrepresented groups. It's okay to say, we don't do this, but this is an amazing idea. Like, I've had a call few months ago with another company, which we hope we're going to work with. I don't want to name names, but he was so honest. He was like, you are one of the first Arab Muslim companies to pitch us something like this. So he was very honest and welcoming, right? He didn't try to say, well, we've done this already. We have a retweet of an Arab woman, right? He was he acknowledged, and he was very honest. Some people might be embarrassed.
Give me a company that you can name that you've had success with, because we're starting to see representation in Walmart, Target, Nike. You know, I think it was Fenty where I saw a hijab.
Yeah, hijabi, yeah.
Yeah, hijabi. And I think that they're starting to, corporations, and you're on the inside, so I'm asking it from somebody on the outside. I think they're starting to understand that we're the fastest growing religion in the world, we're the youngest religion in the world, and we have money.
We have purchasing power.
We have purchasing
They don't care about anything else. They care about them dollars.
Exactly. So give me an example of a successful conversation with a Fortune 500 company.
So for specifically the Arab community, we've worked with Tidal. And even Tidal, with all due respect to them, it was a great opportunity.
But then you're talking about Jay-Z's company?
Yeah.
But Jay-Z is like quasi-Muslim, you know?
No. So they were receptive.
Yeah.
But if you see the emails, I've pitched them. It was like 6-7 months prior, right? I said, hey, Arab Heritage Month. They were so welcoming. We've never done it. It would be great. I said, okay, let's also have a conversation on Twitter. I'll get Swiss Beats. He does a lot for the Arab community, and he samples a lot of Arab music. Like, he would always
Did you introduce him to the Arab music?
So he would always in the past even like, hey, send me Arab music. Like, he'll literally like just start like probably sampling it or getting inspiration. But that was my point. My point for Tidal was, let's get Arab artists, not just Swiss, like even emerging Arab artists, and let's have a conversation on Twitter, because they do that with other race, right? Like,
but what's the difference between, now this is one of our,
or not just Twitter, but just have like a spotlight, right? Like, they have artists and they have a conversation with artists and they make it a thing. And we had enough time, right? Again, I don't want to be negative. It was great. They've actually launched officially, this was last year, Tidal Arab Heritage Month, and I curated the playlist for them, and it was retweeted by like Swiss and the various artists that I included. They reposted it. I think it could have been more, but my point is, I understand from coming from a corporation, because I think corporations want to test things out, right? They're like, this is cool, but let's tippy toe.
That's why I wanted to see, to hear a success story, to see how much they tippy-toed. What's the difference between, because we're floating back and forth, and I want to make sure the audience understands these two terminologies, because they're not the same. So I want you to give your perspective. What is the difference between an Arab and a Muslim?
So not all Arabs are Muslims, right? And not all Muslims are Arabs. So you have Arabs who, have Orthodox Christians, not all Arabs. And I think that's a lot of misconception. Not all Arabs are Muslim. First of all, Muslim is a religion. And I know it sounds very obvious, but you'll be surprised.
I'm sure you went into some corporations who didn't know the difference.
So it's a thing. So it's a real thing. And I don't, even if it's obvious, I've always learned it's not always obvious to somebody else. And it's our responsibility to educate people, no matter how obvious it may seem. So Muslim is a religion, right? And, Arab is a nationality. It's an ethnic race, right? So
nationality,
and then you have
ethnicity.
And then you have obviously North Africa, MENA, and Middle East, North African, that's, and it caters.
What is MENA to you?
Middle East, North African. So that includes, Morocco, Tunisia, and
Libya.
Yeah, Libya.
I went to school in Libya for a moment, right? I went to University of Tripoli for a minute. And I remember on campus having a very difficult time getting other students to understand, from Libya, to understand that they were in Africa.
Mm.
No, we're not African. We are from the greater Middle East, which is the craziest concept ever. Have you heard this? Is that what you're referring to? Or
Yeah, I mean, no, I mean, there is a lot of complexities in terms of like identity within the region. You know, when you, I mean, it goes deep into obviously, you know, history and, you know, European colonialism, right? Like when Arabs finally formed, you know, their 22 countries. Prior to that, you know, it was, you know, there wasn't any Arabs. It was, you know, it was colonized by the Europeans. So a lot of the history and culture was influenced by the, you know, Europeans.
Because they colonized it and they separated the countries, because there's, you know, historically there's Egypt, but I'm not sure about Tunisia. I just don't know some of the other. I know Libya's been there, but then there was a divide between the dark African and the
Upper
Arab,
Egypt, right?
Yeah, upper region,
right?
That persists to this day.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I mean, even when you talk about, unfortunately, I think it's all about ignorance. To be honest, even there's some celebrities that go to Egypt, they get canceled because they claim that this person's promoting blackness in Egypt, right? There's a lot of unfortunately, ignorance, right? It's like, Egypt is in Africa, right?
Right.
Why are you trying to
separate,
create, divide, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's just, you know, that's a whole other conversation. But, you know, when you...
No, my brother, my brother went to Hussein Al Arab University to study Islam. And he was talking to me about just the incredible amount of racism he experienced.
Yeah, unfortunately,
living in Egypt. And the only time he would be saved is when he opened his mouth. Because then they say, oh, he's an American, and they treated him differently.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So when you go and you advocate to these corporations, you're advocating for Arab Americans, for Muslims, for Arab or Ramadan?
Honestly, I'm advocating for groups that have historically been underrepresented. So my work, like, I think I was speaking to you about this on a call, it has actually been focused on my creative ideas. It hasn't only been for the Arab and Muslim community. That's just something I'm personally pushing for various obvious reasons. But yeah, I'm advocating for communities of color. I'm advocating for communities that have historically been excluded from conversations, from people sitting at the table and, you know, wanting to learn more, and people who don't see their representation on, I don't know, like a magazine or advertisement, right? So it's not just advocating, because a lot of times I see that term being on a headline for a PR, you know, like article, and people are like, well, I got featured. It's like, okay, what are you pitching them? You have to have ideas behind it. I saw all these influencers. There are influencers who are positively representing in all different genres, but I also see people who are like, we need representation. Okay, well, categorize. What are you great at? Are you great at communication, creative ideas, right? And I'm not saying you need a corporation to validate your ideas. I know my ideas are amazing, but I know they're not all amazing to work, right? And that's just me being humble, like anybody, right? Not every idea you have is going to work and is great. It might be great, but not the right time. It might not be great at all, right? It might just be like, okay, well, it didn't work out. It's not on their agenda. But a lot of times I genuinely see these, you know, people who are trying to advocate, but they don't continue to push. I think persistence is important, but also identifying what is your, you know, skills. Is it public relations, storytelling? Is it marketing? I personally think Muslims and Arabs are heavily needed in marketing and advertisement, because I've had these calls. There isn't many of us who are actually representing on a large scale.
So with that in mind, what is your company doing? Who are you working with? Who are you advocating to, because your company is one of the few um, Muslim Arab American companies that interface with these large corporations. With the quashing of DEI programs, are you having a more difficult time?
Yes. I think it was a challenge prior. Now I think with obviously the heightened, people are afraid because they don't want to say the wrong thing, especially what's happening in Palestine. Now, if you're not talking about Palestine and, the horrific genocide that's happening, you're going to be, there's like a trend now, even you're going to get blocked. People, I think now the culture is shifting. People are shifting. People want more than just to be, sold something. People need authenticity. And I think companies have always been hesitant, but now it's heightened because they don't want to say the wrong thing. I've been reached out by a very, very well-known boxer's team, PR. Well, he attended this event for raising funds for, Israeli soldiers. And I hit him up. I'm like, how is this okay? Obviously, he made excuses, and I'm not naming names, but
you just named his name. Might as well just say.
Listen, I'm calling people out because you know what? This is the problem, though. There's a lot of I support because they write the checks, but you should be supporting, not just supporting, you should be advocating for humanity. What's happening?
And that's where the shift is, Dena, because it's hard as Muslims. It's hard to just watch this. Every day we're being bombarded with these images that
it takes a toll.
It takes a toll.
But you can't even imagine what they're going through. So you have this guilt that I'm a firm believer that yes, it's horrific what's happening, but I've never seen the amount of awareness and there's just so much information out there that if you choose to be, ignorant and silenced for whatever reason, that's on you. But there's so many artists now that are non-Muslim, non-Arab, are actually speaking out. And in a way where they're including it in their music. Kalani, Macklemore, SZA, right? There's just amount of support where, if you don't care about anything else, you need to care about where are your tax dollars going, right? It's funding a genocide, right? You have to have an awareness. So now you take it to a corporation, add a layer of Arab, hi, post 9/11, hi, wait, are we supposed to talk about Palestine? But we don't. So there's just so many different, let's tippy-toe. We want their money, but let's tippy-toe. What are we supposed to say? But there's just so many different layers.
This is a fascinating time because of everything you're saying. In addition to that, and what we see every day, but you can't or they can't get around the fact that there's 2 billion of us with money.
Right.
So you can't just witness what's happening in Palestine and then say
turn your back.
Turn your back because
Starbucks is losing billions because of the boycott.
McDonald's too.
Listen,
and when these kids get back to school, when the university starts in September, it's going to start right back up.
So if you don't care, let's put it on that. Everybody cares about money, right? So on some level, we are starting to see a shift. Corporations are starting to see a shift. This is what happens when we collectively come together and stand up for humanity, for justice, for liberation, for the Palestinian people, and for all oppressed people, right?
But this is why your voice is important, right? Your voice is important because you're in these rooms. And I want you to tell these young brothers and sisters that's coming behind you, like what it's like to be in the room as an advocate for Muslims, for Arab Americans. You're talking about, because you can't avoid it. Did they say, well, Dena Makawi, Palestine? So please talk about going to these rooms. What is it like having these conversations?
I'll be honest. In the past, I was intimidated. I was kind of discouraged in a sense. But I think even, like my story in the past, where I'm starting to really see how powerful we are when our voices are being heard, right? Even myself, just one individual, when I knew that my voice and my story can inspire millions, that's powerful. Look what happens when we collectively stand and say, this is not okay. This is what's really happening. This is what happens. And being in those rooms, honestly, there's different complexities, but there's also a lot of, if you're not going to do it, if you're not going to say this, you're going to lose money. You're going to lose loyal customers, loyal audience. I think times are shifting now. Before, companies were very standoffish. Like, well, I even pitched Ben and Jerry's, by the way, a Ramadan campaign. I still have the email. And I wish I'll read it to you off camera, about a Ramadan campaign. They're very huge on social justice. And I mentioned all that. Their response was...
What was the Ramadan campaign?
And I actually involved Malcolm X's daughter. She's a good friend of mine, Ambassador Shabazz. Her and I have worked on some projects together. And she was like, hey, maybe you could include this and maybe we could include that. There was a specific idea. I'm like, let's create a...
Talk about the Ramadan campaign.
So, but for in general? So Ben and Jerry. Okay, because I don't want to...
You
they don't deserve my ideas. Oh. No, Ben and Jerry's, they were very, this was like a few years ago, they were very, well, this is not on our agenda kind of thing.
Ice cream during Ramadan, they didn't want to do
flavors, right? Like you could do flavors, dates flavors, and you could create there was a specific campaign that I was pitching to them. But I think more so, when I pitch ideas, it's specific to that brand. And sometimes it doesn't come, by the way. If I meet, I don't know, Verizon and the CEO and I don't have any ideas for him, I don't push it. I'm not like one of those, well, I'm Muslim and I want to just be, I have these ideas. No, it has to be authentic. Sometimes it comes to me and sometimes it doesn't. But for Ben and Jerry's and a few others, there was a specific idea that, I had. But there's a lot of pushback.
And they said no.
In a nice way, yeah.
In a nice way.
Yeah.
You know, what we have to do as Muslims, particularly you, because you're in the seat of authority in this case, is that African Americans went through the same thing. Because the protests outside forced corporations to feature us. Because, if you go to any magazine, there's no black people in Life magazine in the 60s or Newsweek or Time or in an ad, you know what I'm saying? And I'm talking about the 70s when I was a kid, I remember when a black person came on television, my mother would call my aunt, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's crazy, but I remember with Bill Cosby, he was the turn.
Yeah.
That was, I think it was 80, 81, somewhere around there. So we're going to see the same for Arabs and Muslims. So we're starting to see representation.
Yeah.
But, we're moving out of the Arab guys, the terrorist phase.
Yeah.
What are you seeing in terms of network television? You got anything that you're liking that you see Arab Muslims in? I
think there was what was the show? It was a comic that she was
Remy Youssef,
of course, but there was another one. It was a super it was a comic and she was a Pakistani, I believe.
Oh, really?
Yes, Miss Marvel, was it? Miss Marvel, I believe.
She was Pakistani.
Yeah, she was Muslim or Pakistani. I forgot I haven't watched it in a long time, but that was a huge deal.
That's
I'll
huge.
send you it. Yeah,
it's very huge.
So
because usually they test us out in comics first. That's where Black Panther. Say, well, see if it works in the comic book.
Right.
It's not real, Or they'll do the Lion King. You can't make him a black guy, but make him a lion.
Right.
Give him a black man's voice. You know what I'm saying? Give him a Muslim name. Yeah.
No, and I actually I don't know the details, but I was reading. I think Jessica Alba was in a role recently on Netflix where it was negatively depicting Muslims again as terrorists.
Oh, it was horrible.
I don't know how even somebody like her who, she's clearly an activist and promotes, that sense to even agree to be in a television show like that, which I guess proves or shows that she doesn't see anything wrong with it. She might be ignorant on that, but
that's why, see, we are in everyone's life. But they don't recognize us because there's this Muslim that lives in their head that doesn't represent Haq Islam, that doesn't represent Dena Makawi, that doesn't represent Nas, that doesn't represent RZA,
right,
that doesn't represent any other hip hop artist or female that's in the public's eye and a Muslim. And this is why I believe your role is so important because when you walk in, they say, she doesn't look like a Muslim.
Right. Right.
And then what they used to tell me in corporations was like, come on, Haq, you're not a real Muslim.
Right.
What is a real Muslim?
Yeah.
What is a real Muslim
you're
look
asking
like to
me
you?
what a real Muslim...
No, not to you. I would ask them that. I know you know what a real
okay.
Muslim. You're a real Muslim. I'm a real Muslim. When we look in the mirror, we see real Muslims. So before we go, I want to make sure that I want to talk more about you. What's the ultimate goal of your business, your corporation,
Makawi Impact?
Yeah.
My ultimate goal is to be that company where, small or large, but large because they have the most influence, that they can turn to for authentic storytelling, authentic marketing strategies, and really be that turning point for those companies where they lack in terms of communities of color, Muslim community, and the Arab community, when they need, to tap into that community, but also creative ways to do so. Not just, to just feature us in the headline, but then there's nothing happening on ground in communities. Authentic storytelling. And it's only going to happen when they partner with people like us. And yes, there's, I'm sure, Muslims working in their corporations, but I've been in that corporate world. There's hierarchies in that, right? Usually if you're in marketing, you don't handle creative ideas on that capacity. There's other people handling that. Not to say that there aren't any Muslims in corporations, but I personally feel it's important that people of color, like me, like you, are in those rooms with those companies to say, partner with us, work with us, because we'll authentically help you create these campaigns and ideas that you're lacking. So that is the ultimate goal, to be honest. And I'm going to continue to push. And yeah, that's
a very important goal because, people need to see, the world needs to see who we are, and we love our religion. We love Allah. We love our prophet, peace be upon him. But we also are driving Ubers, with that. We're doctors, we're lawyers, we're soccer stars, we're football players. The brother that won the MVP for the Celtics is Muslim during the basketball championship recently. And that's where you advocating comes in at. And I'm glad you're here. Thank you for coming so much. I wish you success. And I want young brothers and sisters to, listen, send her your resume. Because she needs young brothers and sisters who's going to help her advocate on our behalf, because we're not getting enough. We're not getting enough dollars. We're not getting enough recognition.
Yeah.
I know so many Muslims that spent a whole lot of money with Nike. I saw one girl with a hijab running in running stance, you know what I'm saying? So we need more of you, and I'm certain you need help. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so look in this camera right here and tell people how to get in touch with you.
My Instagram handle, personal, is Dena Makawi, and the business is Makawi Impact.
Now, me and Dena have a big project that we're working on. Should we tell them? Not yet, right? It's too early.
You could give like a little hint, but I always like to work in silence a little.
That's right.
But it'll be huge.
It's going to be huge.
Yes.
Before a seed sends its shoot up, it sends its roots firmly into the earth.
Yep.
I'm going to say one thing to you. I'm going to say Eid.
Yes.
That's it, right?
Yes.
We'll leave it there.
Yes.
We'll leave it
Inshallah.
there. Inshallah. Dena, is there anything else you want to give our audience? No, I'm going to force you to do this.
Okay.
Give young Muslims, male and female, a word of advice, a word of inspiration.
Okay, a word of advice and inspiration. Just continue to not just advocate for your talents, but don't ever underestimate how far you could come just by creating and manifesting your ideas. Continue to push for your ideas, even if several people say no, even if you get pushback. Your ideas matter, your story matters, you're unique. Even if you think there's so many others like me with the same story, there's not.
It's not.
There's no exact person on this earth with your experience, with your story, with your outlook on life, with even, and this is another conversation, but if you're ever afraid of people taking your ideas, they could try, but you have the recipe. It'll never be the same.
It'll never be the same.
As an entrepreneur in any space, I think that's the main concern, but that's the word of advice I would give. Just continue to push and fight for what you believe in any aspect of your life.
That's great. And I'm going to close. I'm going to add on to what she said. I'm going to pull something from our book, the Holy Quran, and I'm going to say, I'm going to echo what she says. I'll just quote, "The race is not to the swift, it's to those who can endure." So don't let no stop you. It took, for example, with Drew Hill, I met them at 15. It took me 3 years and an enormous amount of no's before one yes. One yes.
It takes one. It
just takes one.
Yes, it's
and
true.
that's what everyone asks. All you young brothers and sisters have to understand. What Dena's saying is correct. Keep going. If you believe in your idea, you believe in yourself, let your idea manifest itself over time. And somebody will come to you. You just need one.
Yes.
Just one. One yes.
Yes.
One yes. It might be 99 no's. Don't give up, because the 100 might be the yes.
Might be it.
Dena McCowie of McCowie Impact. Please follow her on social media. She's great. She has a lot of great stuff going on. We didn't even talk about your relationship with Swizz Beatz and other hip-hop stars that she represents in some capacity. She referenced Swizz, but she represents him in many capacities. But thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for
appreciate
having me. This has been awesome.
Absolutely. No, you're coming back. You know that.
Yes.
Yeah, we have to tell them about our
yes.
secret.
Yes. I'm excited.
Dena, you got to tell me about this outfit. You told me it's from your friend.
Yes.
I want you to talk about your friend and where she's from. Yes. That's just very important.
So, yes, she's a friend of mine, which I haven't met just like before meeting you today, but she's Palestinian and she's a fashion designer. She's actually has dressed royal Queen of Jordan in the past. And
oh, she's fly.
Yeah. And
she's fly.
To me, these stitches not only represent heritage, obviously Palestine, but each stitch to me, it represents unity. It represents, dignity. It represents,
struggle.
Creativity, struggle.
All of
but
that.
It also, without me even saying anything, it represents, right? And I loved it. It's unique and it's luxurious too. And I feel like this is one of the reasons why I always advocate for, creativity in some capacity, especially for people like Hama. Her name is Hama Lifestyle.
Hama,
Hama.
How do they get in touch with her?
She has an Instagram, Hama Lifestyle on Instagram. And yeah, she's custom makes these designs if anyone is interested. They're super luxurious, they're super exclusive, but
this outfit, from my vantage point, is gorgeous. The stitching is incredible. But more importantly, we want to support our Palestinian brothers and sisters in any way that we can. So I want to make sure we give a shout out to her. It's beautiful. No, it's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful outfit. Dena, thank you again for coming.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And shout out to, what's my girl's name?
Hama Lifestyle.
Hama Lifestyle. Hama Lifestyle. Okay.